joint ownership agreement. This is put forth by the city administrator. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
April?
Just in brief, the goal of this agreement is to better define the city's media relationship with the school district, and it helps to clarify which entity pays for what in terms of personnel, supplies, and equipment. It was all reflected in this year's budget that you approved, and the school district has approved it, and the media committee is recommending approval as well.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business, item 2A, consideration of resolution 17-12-2227, authorizing the city of Monona to apply for a large-scale lake management planning grant from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, put forth by the Public Works Director. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. The DNR is asking us to get City Council approval just to submit the large-scale lake management planning grant application. This will be the third and final grant that we're applying for to help us do research and engineering for the PCB contaminated area north of Nichols Road in Winnequa Park. The grant requires us to have $37,500 available to complete the work needed in 2018. The grant reimbursement is for $25,000, so the city's portion is $12,500. The grant application is due December 10th. The work completed that will be completed in 2018 includes the final design, writing the final technical specifications, and coming up with a final opinion of probable cost. They're going to take care of writing all of the permits required for the DNR, and then assist the city with bidding services. We're also working with Strand to come up with a date to have the engineers come in either January or February to give a summary of their work to date. They've been working with us the past 2 years on this. 2018 will be 3 years. Answer any questions that you have. They'll also be coming to the Public Works Committee, answering their questions as well. So we're working on that. So,
Any questions for Mr. Stefani? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 2B, consideration of ordinance 12-17-693, amending parking limits on Royal Avenue and Gishalt Drive, also put forth by the Public Works Director. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move approval.
Second.
Dan?
thank you, Mayor. Before you is a resolution to change the no parking limitations on Gishalt and Royal Avenue near First Supply and Walmart. The Vice President at First Supply, Mike Hickok, has requested the city consider changing the no parking rules. They need to address the need for more parking due to increase in sales and staff parking. So they're seeking a change to the no parking limits on the street. Right now, they would like parking allowed 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The no parking limits would apply 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, as well as on weekends. Walmart has been contacted, both by the PD and First Supply, and they do not have any issues with this request. The parking limits would be starting 40 feet north of First Supply's northernmost driveway, rounding Gishalt to Royal Avenue for a distance of 380 feet.
And this was approved by Public Works?
This was approved by Public Works Committee on November 1st.
Mr. Kitzler?
What was the reasoning for no parking in the first place in that? Or was it just standard practice to do no parking?
I believe that was taken care of before I got here years ago, but I think they wanted to limit semi-truck traffic on that area, rounding over to, I think it's Speedway. up to Southtown. So they just kind of want to get the truck traffic off the road in that area.
Yeah, wasn't it a like drivers sleeping at night there and
Right.
things like that, or?
And other things.
Which is why we continue to prohibit
The other
parking.
things.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
so,
That was going to be my comment. It was a safety concern, and public safety brought this up. I believe it was internally, or maybe at our previous meeting, and it was a discussion of the limit with hours. It made perfect sense.
Okay. Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you. Next up is a presentation of preliminary design report for engineering services for West Broadway corridor improvements by the Yahara Group, which is a University project. They're here for information purposes. And I think we've all received a copy of their final report.
While they're getting set up, I can do a little introduction.
Okay, sure.
We had actually talked about this project as a possible university year project back when we were determining which projects we would do, but we couldn't quite get this one together in time. So Professor Greg Harrington's class is back with their team of geotech, construction, transportation, hydro, and engineering students of all kind. And they've looked at alternatives for improvements to the West Broadway corridor that would refresh the corridor and stimulate the recreation and economic growth. And we thought this might be a nice class project with the impending riverfront development. But again, this was something they kind of did on their own initiative, and they are, I'm sure, excited to tell us about it.
Yes, thank you. Is there any opportunity for us to have a presentation, or to project our presentation?
Sure. Can you use that computer that's there, or do you have a
We have
thumb drive?
a cord connected. We're just not sure.
I think
I
they're
think
doing
there
it.
we
There
go.
you go.
There you are.
Yay.
That was the quickest
There we
it's
go.
ever.
That was great.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction and for having us here today. As was stated earlier, we are the Yahara Group. We're a group of UW-Madison students, and we are going to be talking today about the project that we've been working on for the past semester, which is improvements to the West Broadway corridor. And to start off today, we're going to give a brief introduction to each member on the team, and then we're going to go into the project overview, which includes the boundaries and the needs as well as the objectives of our project. Then finally, we're going to talk about some of the design solutions that we came up with as a team. So to begin, my name is Kira Lotzer. I am a fifth-year senior at the studying civil engineering with a focus in the environment.
My name is Mitch Stan. I'm also a fifth-year senior studying civil engineering.
I'm Cole Hernicle, fifth-year senior, graduating in December. I'm also studying civil engineering with a focus in structures.
And my name is Morgan Sanger. I'm also a fifth-year senior, graduating in December, so I guess in a couple of weeks. And I'm studying geological engineering, and I was the lead geotechnical engineer on this project.
So for this project, it is for our capstone, which is a course provided by the University of Wisconsin, and it's supposed to be a summary of all the things that we have learned over the course of our time at UW, and it's supposed to act as a real-world problem, which is multidisciplinary, and we are one group out of 12 different groups in the entire class. We are working with the city of Monona, however, there are many other owners for different projects. And so for our project, we are working on the area of West Broadway, which is located just north of the Beltline. It is a small portion of the corridor, and it is bounded on, if you can see on the map, the most western portion is Bridge Road, and the most eastern portion of our project is Monona Drive. And so in this area, there are multiple different mixed-use zones that we wanted to take into account. The first zone that we considered were the more commercialized zones, and this includes the new redevelopments in Yahara Commons and Yahara Coves. Then we also wanted to pay attention to the wetlands and green space along the corridor, as we view this as an important part of Monona. Then lastly, there's the residential zones where we wanted to take into account the fact that we would be working on a construction project next to people's homes. So in the beginning of the semester, we were given a request for proposal provided by our professor as well as Sonia and April on what kind of needs that the city was looking for this area on West Broadway. So we identified 4 main objectives that we wanted to focus the most on in order to improve the corridor. The first of these objectives is increasing pedestrian and bicycle safety along the corridor. The second is improving different connections between the new redevelopments, and we view this as creating a more cohesive community feel to the area. Our third objective is increasing waterfront access. This was identified as a priority mainly because the area is very beautiful near the Ohio River, and we wanted to emphasize that. And our last objective was to use sustainable designs as well as to incorporate aesthetically pleasing designs. So the first design solution that we came up with during our preliminary engineering phase was this option as shown on the screen. And this was the lowest cost option that we came up with. It would look the most similar to what is currently in place along the corridor. The biggest difference would be we would put a painted buffer line in between the cars and bicyclists. We designed this so that while the bicycle traffic would still be at grade with the rest of the cars, there would be more separation than there currently is, as the current corridor does not leave enough room for bicyclists. The second solution we came up with had a completely separated two-way bike lane on the north side of the West Broadway corridor, and this was our most costly option. However, it also did have increased safety, as bicyclists would be completely separated and at a different grade from the cars. Then the third option that we came up with was the mid-range cost solution, and this solution featured a raised curb on both sides of the roads, which would act as a buffer between cars and bicyclists. And this was, we held a public information meeting with several of our other students acting as pretend residents of Monona, and this was the favorite design for them, as it incorporated many of the needs of the public, as well as increasing safety and keeping that connectiveness and ease of transportation. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Morgan, who will talk about more of our design solutions.
Thank you. So we spent the first 6 weeks or so of our class developing those 3 designs that Kira just walked us through. And then for the last 5 weeks, we chose the final design and have been doing a more complete design of that. So I'm going to walk you through tonight how our final design choice achieves the objectives that we outlined at the beginning of this presentation. The first of those being accommodating bicycles and pedestrians. So this image shows the existing bike lane along the West Broadway corridor, and it's 4 feet right now, which is below the standard. The standard is 5 feet. And so we were looking, and also there's no physical barrier between the moving vehicle traffic and the bicycles. And so we were looking for an option to improve safety for these bicyclists. And as Kira mentioned, the design option that we chose was a safety curb, which you can see it's sort of the raised line that flanks the roads on each side. And we will be increasing the bike lane width to 6 feet. In order to better accommodate pedestrians along the corridor, to encourage pedestrian traffic between the new Yahara Commons and the new Yahara Cove developments, we are proposing to increase the amount of pedestrian crossings along the corridor. So currently there are 4 outlined here in yellow, and with the Yahara Commons redevelopment, there will be a 5th added here in orange. And our final design solution adds an additional 2 crossings near the Falcon Circle intersection, as well as at the entrance to the Yahara Cove Commons. Additionally, at the Falcon Circle intersection, we are our final design incorporates a median brake and a left turn lane to allow for traffic to turn into the area, to allow for eastbound traffic to turn into the Falcon Circle area so that that space can be developed and can be sold. Each of the 7 crosswalks shown in this image will be constructed using a red brick crossway and flashing beacons, kind of like the ones along Monona Drive, and this will improve visibility and safety for pedestrians as well as it's aesthetically pleasing. To further accommodate pedestrian traffic along the corridor and to connect, again, the Yahara Commons and the Yahara Cove redevelopments, we are looking to extend the Yahara, what is it called? The Yahara Cove Boardwalk. That was escaping me, excuse me. So this is the existing Yahara Cove Boardwalk outlined in yellow. And our final design solution, the Yahara Cove Boardwalk looks like these bollards here along a sidewalk path. And so we are looking to extend this boardwalk down the extent of West Broadway along the Yahara River by the Yahara Commons, and then crossing West Broadway and zooming in on this area south of West Broadway, just north of the Monona Wetland Conservancy. We are looking to add a nature boardwalk feature. This structure, or this area, is currently undeveloped, and we think that adding this feature will allow for visitors and residents to enjoy this beautiful waterfront area. So this boardwalk would include a 210-foot walkway out to an 80 by 36-foot deck, complete with seating, so that residents and visitors can enjoy fishing and bird watching and picnics and the like. Just another view. To keep this area as beautiful and natural as it is right now, we look to incorporate sustainability features into our final design. Those included all signage and lighting along the corridor will be LED, and then the addition of those bollards for the Yahara Cove Boardwalk extension will be solar. And then we also looked at introducing stormwater management practices. Currently, the stormwater along West Broadway goes into the sewer drain and gets pumped to Nine Springs Water Treatment Plant, which is fine, but we are looking at a maybe more beautiful and more sustainable way to do that, which is to implement these bioswale features. So we have designed these bioswale features, which are landscaping features, I guess, to use that word again, that where the water from the road runs off into the landscaping and is infiltrated there, so it does not go into the stormwater system. In our landscaping and other features, aesthetic features that we chose along the corridor, we were inspired by Monona Drive, and we use this as inspiration because we want drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists, when they're traveling through Monona, to feel like they're always there, they're always in Monona, and to create a cohesive community feel. Additionally, we saw an opportunity for aesthetic improvements on the bridge along West Broadway corridor, the bridge that crosses the Yahara River. This bridge has a lifetime of 75 years, and we are 35 years into it, so there was no need to reconstruct the bridge. However, we are looking to remove this jersey barrier that is on the right side of the left screen. That jersey barrier poses a safety risk for bicyclists because they cannot evacuate the lane if need be. And then also our final design solution involves a resurfacing and redoing of the railing along the bridge. Our design for the bridge would include a railing that is inspired by the Monona sails and a subdeck that is inspired by the Monona waves. So if we were a real engineering firm and you had hired us to do this project, we would, pending the approval of our design, begin pre-construction in January of this year. And then we would go through our 2 phases of construction, which each lane will be completed in 1 phase to always keep traffic moving through the West Broadway corridor to accommodate residents. And then we would be completing this construction at the end of 2019. And our opinion of probable cost for this final design solution would include a $1.1 million design fee and an $8.1 million construction fee, totaling $9.25 million for the city of Monona. So with that, we'd like to open it up for any questions. Thank you for listening and for having us tonight.
No, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did a nice job. Doug?
Yep.
No, go ahead.
It is very impressive, but I feel like I want to ask you a few questions. So, the designs that you presented, are all those, do they comply with the MUTCD? The manual and uniform traffic control devices?
So I used the manual uniform control traffic devices for the median break, the intersection at Falcon Circle and Broadway, but that was the extent that I used the MUTCD for the purpose of this class, the analysis.
Okay. I was just wondering in particular with the one alternative where you had sort of the arrows pointed as a divider, whether that's MUT would be compliant.
If it would help clarify that, those drawings are more of a conceptual rendering rather than a specific engineering document, so they may not necessarily meet the specific standards. They're more the idea.
Okay. And would the proposals that you have, would they fit with an existing right-of-way, or would it need to be right-of-way acquired?
The proposed design actually moves the alignment away from some of the existing houses on the south side where it's a little bit constrained. So it alleviates that, but it does push into the north side a tiny bit. So the right-of-way would change very slightly.
So the city under this would need to acquire more right-of-way?
No, the existing lots that it bumps into are already owned by the city of Monona.
Okay, because obviously that's a huge, if you have to acquire it right away, it's very expensive and time consuming. And then, did you look at the safety of that raised divider between the bike lanes and the traffic lanes? In particular, whether it might cause, if there's a driver drift into that, if they hit that raised divider, does that create a potential safety problem?
So,
Carry on, go ahead.
I was just going to comment. We drew inspiration for that curb based on the curb from University Avenue. If you've driven along there, they have a very similar feature. And we figured that because it's used in a very big road there, the safety issues would be minimal compared to the safety benefits of keeping the traffic separate from the bicyclists.
I thought it looked familiar. Right. The speeds might be higher on Broadway, which would play into that, though, evaluating the safety. And then the last thing, when you looked at constructing the platform, did you consider how much noise there is that comes from the belt line, which is, I don't know, very close to the south of that? And whether that would be something, or people really going to want to use it?
That's a very good consideration. We didn't consider the noise of the belt line in that particular area.
Okay.
I didn't notice it on our site visit, but maybe I was just not paying attention. Yeah.
Well, it could be that sometimes the noise, there's so much noise, I think it may actually come down, like goes up and comes down farther into the neighborhoods. Anyway, I thought you did a really nice job, but I just wanted to raise some of those questions, things that you would probably want to look at.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Spate?
I'm curious, and well done, by the way, I wanted to say that first. I'm curious about the three different proposals for the bike lanes. Mm-hmm. Do you have, first off, I want to clarify that the opinion of cost is for that mid-range. Did you work up by any chance the cost of the other And you just didn't include those in this presentation?
So I believe in the preliminary document that's actually in the agenda notes for today.
Okay.
There's a opinion of probable cost for all three alternatives.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere towards the end in some big spreadsheet.
Okay, great. Well, if it's here, that's
Yeah.
good. That's all. I wanted to ask about the issue of maintenance and snow removal, and if you can share anything with us about how that will vary with these three options. If you have anything to share about that.
So we didn't do any sort of analysis on that. That's a really good point. We did, what I can think of now is the university has a blower that fits sidewalk and bike lane widths, and so for either the second option with the separate bike path or with the safety curb, you'd probably need to have one of those, and it wouldn't be able to be removed with a normal plow.
Too bad Dan's not here. Do we know if we have one of those?
Right.
Well, this is
I
actually
would assume
a
so.
county road, and so the city of Monona doesn't
That's
clear
true.
it, but it is something we'd want to, the county would certainly weigh in on.
It's true. Anyone else? No? Well, this was great.
Yeah, thank
Lots
you
of-
very much.
Lots of
Nice
food for
job.
thought, and we wish you all the best, especially those of you who are graduating.
Thank you.
Congratulations. These your instructors are back here.
These
If
are
you'd like to
our
introduce
mentors.
yourself.
Yeah.
Your mentors, yeah.
Yeah, so Jim Hansen and my name is Derek Hugnes, and we've been mentoring this group as they work their way through the contracting, the public involvement, the different options, rating the options, interfacing with the city representatives, and so we would like to say that how much we appreciate the city and the communities and some of the agencies that provide projects for the students to work on. It becomes a very real-world example of sort of the end of their education, to how they can apply what they've learned in school to a community like this. Thank you.
That's great, and I'm sure we'd be happy to provide more experiences like that in the future, so thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Nice job.
And if you'd like to hang around to learn about how TIF works, TIF
101.
Mr. Becker will be giving a little tutorial on that.
You better have the graphics,
Yeah.
like drawings.
Something pretty, perhaps?
Oh, let's see here.
Uh-oh.
It doesn't have to be an adapter, like an RGB HDMI adapter or something like that.
Andrew's our tech support.
Unless these guys in there.
That'll go quicker.
I don't have an RGB for them. I have HDMI.
Thank you.
Or
Yeah.
USB.
Good luck with finals. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure. I don't really think we have that.
Is there another laptop I can plug in?
None of
jump
ours
drive?
even have it. New
I have a
laptops
jump
out.
drive if I can get it in.
Jump drive should work.
Sorry about that.
I should have a,
Jump
let's have a
drive.
jump.
No?
On this thing.
No.
Oh,
Shoot.
okay, well.
So that
That's why we're updating this,
It
right?
won't work
Okay.
with any of our computers?
No, because we don't have the RGB or whatever. No new computer has the connection anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just not a basic thumb drive that can,
Oh, yeah, there's no thumb drive over there either.
Yeah. So a little adapter that converts RGB to HDMI will
Yeah, it's about
solve
that
the
big.
puzzle.
okay.
But,
Well, that's unfortunate.
well,
Floppy disk won't work.
I don't really have a lot of fancy graphics anyway, so
Okay.
I'll just talk my way through this. And some of you have seen this presentation before anyway, but for the newer council members, this is a brief.
Excuse me, did you think you might have a,
Do you have like the papers physically?
Yes.
Would a document scanner work? Well, not a scanner, but like.
Oh, that'll be better than,
Old school.
yeah.
You need an HDMI cable?
I don't see any.
They don't have one.
cables or adapters.
I have one.
that would-
Oh,
I
Brian
don't-
has one? Oh.
Oh,
If he has an HDMI cable, will it fit in somewhere?
it'll fit in my laptop. I don't know
Well,
if
yeah,
it'll
I
get
mean, on
into
the
their
other side,
system.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where it would necessarily connect in.
We haven't done our equipment upgrade up there, have we?
So,
We just started.
We've budgeted for that.
Right, although we are getting a new computer, I think, for,
the HDMI into here? That's HDMI out.
Oh, I can't remember.
some new mics, but
I know for sure new mics. I'm not sure about the laptop.
I know there was some,
I thought there was something about
you
it.
know, foreign related here.
Do you want to try Brian's cord, or?
We don't have a way to connect it to anything.
Sure, where I
Okay.
can put it to.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll check on
All right,
that.
you want to flip it just to this?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience.
That's okay.
There's a way to zoom in on here, I think.
The gray knob on the right, or left side.
Beautiful.
Hey.
Great. Snacks.
That
Yes.
Yeah, that should work. Okay, so TIF 101. I've got about a 10-minute overview. I'm going to go over some of the bullet points, not really talk about them very much unless there's questions about them. But essentially, TIF stands for Tax Incremental Financing. It's a financing tool above, anything else. It's a way of helping municipalities finance projects that help improve the community, either by eliminating blight or setting the stage for new construction and new development. There are 4 types of TIF districts that state statutes allow to be created. Blight elimination TIFs, neighborhood conservation TIF districts, mixed-use TIF districts, and industrial TIF districts. And so at the outset, when you create a TIF district, you declare its purpose, and it's got to be one of those 4 purposes. And all of your project costs have to be consistent with the purpose for which the TIF district was created. So TIF is a public-private partnership. It's also a public-public partnership. The public-public partnership is that when you create a TIF district, you're changing the way property taxes for the properties within that district, you're changing the way they're allocated. And so every piece of property in the city of Monona has 5 overlying taxing jurisdictions. You've got the city, you've got the county, you've got the technical college, you've got the state, and the school district. And so when you create a TIF district, the allocation formula is changed so that the city is able to capture all the property taxes from that property. Any new development that occurs in the TIF district after that district is created, the new development, the taxes on the new development go into a special pot of money specifically for the TIF district. And so the school district doesn't get any of that, the county doesn't get any of that, it all comes into this special account. So, and the reason this was set up was that before TIF, municipalities incurred 100% of the costs of encouraging new development or creating the conditions so that new development could succeed, but all the overlying taxing jurisdictions benefit from that. So in the mid-70s, when they created the TIF statutes, they set this up as a public-private or public-public partnership. The public-private partnership comes in because the TIF investment is intended to bring in private investment, significantly more private investment. So the whole idea is that you're using TIF to make a public investment to create conditions within an area that allow development to occur. or blight to be eliminated, as the case may be. A few other things to just put out there, what TIF is not, because a lot of times in the public's eye, TIF is not understood very well. TIF is not a tax exemption, so the taxes are all the same, property taxes are all the same, whether you're inside a TIF district or outside a TIF district. It's not, there's no rate increase, so people in a TIF district don't pay more, unless there's special assessments associated with the project of some sort. There's no tax rate differential. It's not an entitlement. So if you own property in a TIF district and you want to construct a new project, it doesn't mean you're entitled to receive TIF benefits. And it's not a giveaway. So in every TIF deal, it's required that there be a development agreement, and the development agreement spells out what are the city's obligations and what are the developer's obligations in order to complete the development as it's proposed. Let's see, touched on that. The number of TIF districts in Wisconsin, there's a little under 2,000 TIF districts, and about 40 to 50 TIF districts are created every year. See some of the other figures there. 93% of all TIF districts in Wisconsin are closed successfully. That is, they've received sufficient revenue to pay off the costs of the TIF district before the statutory life of the district concludes. In fact, the average life of a TIF district is 16.9 years, I think that's on here somewhere, 16.5 years. And TIF districts can last anywhere from 20 years to 27 years. So for mixed use and industrial TIF districts, those have 20-year lives. Blight elimination and neighborhood conservation districts have 27-year lives. Let's see. It looks crooked on the platform here, but it's straight up here. So when a city or village creates a TIF district, first they have to make a finding that, well, first of all, you establish your area, and you have to make a finding that relates to the purpose for which you're creating a TIF district. You also have to make a finding that, but for the use of TIF and the creation of this TIF district, the development that you'd like to see occur within that district will not happen. And so that's an important, that's actually a finding that's made by the Joint Review Board, which is a special body made up by representatives from the overlying taxing jurisdictions. And that's one of the most important findings that they get to make to decide whether they can go along with the proposal that the city is making in creating a TIF district. So so if you can make that finding, you establish your boundaries, and then you talk to the Joint Review Board about whether they're going to go along with it, and then a public hearing is held, and the public gets to have input on this, and then after the public hearing is held, then the City Council approves a resolution creating the TIF district, and then the Joint Review Board gets the final say on whether or not that TIF district is created. So they have to make three findings, and if they are satisfied with those findings, then the district is created. You send in your application material to the Department of Revenue, they review it, and then they certify your TIF district. It all takes about 3 months, 3 to 4 months to create a TIF district, and then there's certain times of the year that DOR reviews and certifies. So this is the time of the year now that they're doing that. Here's an example of how the tax allocation works. So the different colored bands on the bottom represents the overlying taxing jurisdiction. So we don't have, oh yeah, there it is. The school district is yellow, technical college is green, county is blue, and city is pink. And on the far left is at the beginning, as you're creating the TIF district, the value of the property is shown by those colored bands. So it's that small amount that's on the left-hand side here. That's the base value of the TIF district. It's the value of all the property in the district at the time that the TIF is created. And then as you make improvements in the district and development starts to occur and the tax base starts increasing, it's that gray triangle-shaped area. The tax base grows over time, and then at the end of the life of the TIF district, you can see the value should be significantly higher than it was at the beginning. And when the TIF closes, then all that additional tax revenue starts flowing to the overlying taxing jurisdictions. And then here's a graphic example. We've got a blighted site here that's valued at $100,000 and it generates $2,500 a year in taxes, and that's distributed to the overlying taxing jurisdictions. And then in that top slide, the new infrastructure and improvements are put in, roads are built, development occurs, and now the property is worth significantly more than $100,000 and it's generating more taxes. The graphic there shows that in a typical TIF district, most of your costs are occurring in the front end of the TIF district in the first several years, but most of your revenue comes in after about 5 or 6 years, because it generally takes 3 or 4 years to start seeing some revenue, even if development occurs right away in a TIF district. So it's front end loaded, but then you have a long period of time to generate the revenue to pay off the expenses you incur on the front end. And then in this slide, after the TIF dissolves, then we see the overlying taxing jurisdictions reaping the benefits of the TIF district. Let's see here. I covered the statutory provisions. Project costs relate to the purpose of the TIF. The 12% test. So one of the requirements or limitations of TIF is that a city cannot create a new TIF district if you already have 12% of your equalized value as increment in existing TIF districts. So Monona has been right on the edge. This year, you're just a little bit under that 12%. I think you're at 10.8% as it stands right now. So you have enough capacity to create another TIF district or two, depending on how large they are. Let's see here. We talked about the the joint review board. And we did all that. Oh, eligible project costs. So there are very specific project costs that are identified in the statutes that municipalities can incur. And they include the items listed here, things like organizational costs, administration, financial, professional services, environmental remediation, breakdown of property costs, development incentives, and then cost to promote development or redevelopment, including acquisition, relocation, demolition, site improvements, infrastructure, advertising and promotion. So there's quite a laundry list of eligible project costs. And then to cap it all off, the statutes say, and anything at the discretion of the local governing body. So it's pretty wide open as far as what can be considered a project cost. But as I said before, it's not a blank check. You have to have reasons and direct connections between the investments you're making and the type of TIF district it is and the type of development that you'd like to see there. We went through the creation procedure already, very quickly. We talked about the timing and the different periods within a TIF district, and the most important ones are the life of the district, the statutory life. It's either 20 or 27 years. But then the next most important one is the expenditure period. The expenditure period is the time in which the city can expend money and charge costs to the TIF district. It used to only be 7 years, but the legislature recently changed that so that it's 5 years less than the life of the TIF. So for a 27-year district, it would be a 22-year expenditure period. And for a 20-year district, it would be a 15-year expenditure period. A few issues to keep in mind is that striking that balance between the need for TIF, the public benefits that could flow from a public investment that's made versus private windfall that could accumulate to property owners as the TIF goes along. So we need to keep that in mind. The CDA hires me to review TIF proposals, and that's part of my job, is to kind of look at that balance between public benefit and private windfall. There should be an appropriate payback period, so that's tied to the public benefits that are received from the project. Sometimes you can get a developer that comes in and says, oh, I need the full 20 years or 27 years of this TIF district in order to make this project work. Well, then it better be a pretty darn good project to commit to that length of time. The city of Monona has one, the former Garden Circle area that's now Heritage Monona. And that's one that, going into it, we knew that this was going to take the whole life of the TIF district, but that was a significantly blighted area. There's a lot of crime in that area. And so I think there were significant public benefits from the city making that investment and cleaning it up. Other things to keep in mind are broader fiscal impacts, including to the overlying taxing jurisdictions like the school district. Placing housing in a TIF district creates issues for the school. If the school needs kids and the housing will attract new kids to the school district, it can be a positive thing. But if it's not, they're essentially not receiving much income from the property as long as it's in the TIF district. And if there are no new kids in the school district as a result of it, then it could have a net negative impact to the school. And then there's other things, development impacts like traffic and jobs, environmental issues and public services and those kinds of things you need to keep an eye out for. The quality of development and consistency with other city plans. So you don't want your TIF plans working at cross purposes to other adopted plans like your comprehensive plan or your zoning ordinance. TIF can be risky, but there are ways of managing it. The riskiest type of TIF district is one that you create, a city might create, but there's no project there in hand. And so you create a TIF district hoping to prompt something to happen. And that's perfectly legitimate to do that. You just need to take more caution in managing TIF when you're in that situation and not getting too far ahead of yourselves on the expenditure side without having some kind of time frame for new development to occur. The risk is always there, but a good development agreement will minimize that risk. And some of the issues that a development agreement might consider are the timing and phasing of expenditures, the commitment, as I said earlier, the commitments of the community, the commitments of the business and the developer. And then you could have the development agreement secured financially by placing a mortgage on the property, or the developer guaranteeing the increment, or the developer taking out a performance bond, or very popular these days are pay-as-you-go TIFs, where the city does not borrow any money that goes to the developer borrows the money, and then gets paid back as the increment is created over time. Some of the recent changes to the TIF statutes, allow expenditures to be made within a half mile of the TIF district. Again, as long as you can make that connection back to the purpose for which the district was created. You don't have to spend your money strictly inside the TIF. If there are expenditures that need to be made to support that development and that's outside the TIF, that's allowable. And then we'll talk about this just a little more in just a minute, but when a TIF is ready to close, a city can essentially just pass a resolution to keep it open an extra year, and you can capture that extra year of TIF revenue and to fund an affordable housing improvement program. And the city's already done that with the Renew Monona program, using funds from TID number 3 when that closed a few years ago. TID number 2 is getting ready to close, and so there's a resolution tonight to do that for TID number 2 as well. And then every year I do a summary report for the CDA about the status of the TIF districts, and this is from that last report. So the city has 7 TIF districts. The top line there is TID number 2. That's the one that's closing, and the chart shows the increment in each of the TIF districts. You'll notice TID number 9 is the one in red that dips below the 0 line. That means it's in negative or in a decrement situation. The current value of that TIF district is less than it was when it was created. And so we had 2 years in a row now where it was less than the base value by more than 10%. And so that created a threshold where the city could reset the base value to what it is now. So we just completed the process to do that. And then just some more statistics on those 7 TIF districts. And that's it. That's all I got. Any questions?
Jeff?
So you had mentioned the 93% success rate of TIFs, and I was curious, I know occasionally we're allowed to transfer monies from one TIF district to another, essentially to make one solvent. When we do that, is that reflected in that statistic, or is that a way for municipalities to essentially kind of share the burden?
Yeah, it's that. It's basically sharing the burden within the community. So the 93% success rate wouldn't consider a TIF district closing successfully because they shared revenue between TIFs within the community. Yeah.
Anyone else?
That's a quick question that you may or may not know something about. So there was a bill that was recently introduced about TIF levy limit. Do you know anything about that and how that would impact?
I don't know very much about it. Okay. I just saw it in, scanning the legislature's actions, but I never really looked into what that was all about.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a little blurb, but I didn't really understand.
Yeah, I think it was for a very specific situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of other TIF actions, like the city of Middleton is over their 12%, and they want to subtract some and create a new district at the same time, and so they've got special legislation to allow them to do that.
Sounds like that's what this one's for.
Yeah. The town of Cable is trying to get full municipal TIF powers for the Telemark Lodge. The developer's proposing to renovate that. It's located in a town. Towns don't have access to the full TIF law that municipalities do, so they're trying to get that. So that's the most common type of TIF legal action or legislative action, is special purpose, for specific situations. So if you ever come up across a limitation of TIF that is blocking you from doing something, it's relatively easy to get something like that through the legislature. So if you read the TIF statute, you can see there's a lot of special exemptions and special situations in there.
As it relates to those four categories, if you will, blight, industrial, are they very specifically defined by the committee?
Yes, they are. Well, they're.
So blight is very, what would?
There are
be
definitions
considered
of blight in the
Okay.
statutes.
Okay.
They are very broad and subject to interpretation.
Okay.
Generally, the courts favor municipalities in that regard. So the standard for creating a blight elimination TIF district is that the city council declares that an area is blighted. And, you know, you would hope that the city council has gone through some research to make a finding of blight. And so that's usually the process for that. And courts almost always uphold a municipality's declaration of that.
Anyone else? We all understand it completely.
Just a quick follow-up question. So with the blight reports, isn't a blight report part of the TIF creation report when that's done? So they look at specific parcels and argue why this property is blighted?
That's right, yeah. So they need to make a specific finding of blight, and so there's usually a report that goes behind that, somebody goes out and inspects every property, and there's a chart of, you know, factors that could be considered blighting influences, and the more serious ones get higher points, and so you tally up the points, and that's, you know, typically how that's done.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know I appreciated that
Thank
the
you.
first time, and I do again.
You're welcome.
Always new questions about TIF.
And I'll stay here for the next one, the next item.
All right. Well, then the next item, item 2E, consideration of Resolution 17-12-2228, extending the life of tax incremental District Number 2 to fund the Renew Monona Affordable Housing Improvement Program. This is put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Move to take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, or I guess Gary, you're going to explain this, or?
Yeah,
If you, okay.
yeah, Sonia said I could,
Okay.
so she wouldn't have to come to, which is fine. So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, state statutes allow the city to extend the life of TID number 2 by a year. TID number 2 is generating about just a little bit under $1.4 million in revenue. And a few years ago, the city set up the Renew Monona program when TID number 3 closed. I think that was funded at just a little over $100,000, if I remember right. So this is a significant increase in the amount of funding for that program. The CDA is discussing what changes they might want to make to the Renew Monona program, so you can expect them to be coming back to the council with some changes to the program, probably in the February timeframe, I would think.
March?
March. Yeah. Oh, hey, Tom. So that's about it. I think this is one of the best changes to the TIF law that I can remember the legislature ever making. Housing is an issue in almost every community in the state, and keeping the housing stock up to modern standards is a particular challenge, and this is one way of helping to address that.
Any questions, comments? Guess not. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, boards, etc. We'll start with Alder Coor.
Well, we passed the school district agreement for the community media committee, and so thank you for that. And we'll be meeting again next Thursday.
Alder Holmquist?
No report.
Alder Spade?
No report.
Alder Wood?
No report.
Alder Kitzler?
No CDA meeting this month. Is this an opportunity to ask questions of department reports, or is that later?
I guess
we try.
I guess not. What?
Oh, so I just had two quick questions. The mural, did they repaint or refinish the anti-vandalism coating?
Yes,
I see
they
a
did.
head nod.
Yes.
And then the Tecumseh, so it mentions there's a agreed upon date. Do we have a date for that?
Citation paperwork should have been going out today because we have not yet gotten a demolition permit application and a copy of the contract with the firm demolition date.
Okay.
So that, we touched base with our city attorney on that
Perfect.
this morning.
Cool, thanks. I'm done.
Alder Moore?
Nothing to report.
City Clerk?
No report, Mayor.
City Administrator?
I have a report. I'm going to pass these out. Just a kind of a fun thing, we've got our WVMO Christmas show is coming up of a Christmas Carol. Our very own city clerk, Joan, is playing the part of Mrs. Cratchit, and I have a 3-line cameo. So there might be some other friends and neighbors that you know, and it was a very first-class production at Buzz Kemper's studio for the arts, which is right downtown, and we even have original music and everything, so we're pretty excited about it. And just another note too, talking about entertainment for the holidays, our very own court clerk, Toya Robinson, I am told is a wonderful singer, and there's a couple of performances I have down if you're looking for something fun and entertaining. She will be performing with the Madison Symphony at a couple different dates. So I just put that out there. Some good sustainability news for you. We were able to just find the funds to do it. We got a electric vehicle, our first ever, and we managed to get it for $500. It was originally $15,000. We purchased it from the city of Verona. We didn't think anybody could argue about that too much. It's just this little truck-looking thing. It's very small, and we will be using it for parades and running around the parks, picking up trash and things like that. But for $500, we thought it was a steal, and it is electric, our very first one, so we're kind of excited about
We
that.
can email you pictures if you want.
Yes, we should post pictures, so we're kind of pumped up about that. And just one last thing, I'm trying to get together for January, the cleanup ordinance, so if you have an opinion about a possible earlier start time for council and finance, let me know. I've heard from Andrew, Jen, Mary, and Doug, I think, so a few more I need to hear from, one way or the other. And we'll talk about it some more. So.
How do you want to hear from us? Just an email?
Yeah, that would be fine. Just send me or catch
And it
me
was
at
the 6 o'clock for finance and personnel.
finance and 7 for city council. So just let me know if that works for you. I know some of you have to come from work and whatnot, so. And that's it.
Okay, and just to confirm, the Christmas Carol runs between 45 minutes and an hour, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
An hour.
Mhm.
I understand that they did hit, I've just heard rumor, via the grapevine, that you guys knocked it out of the park.
I was pretty amazed by the talent that I heard. I'm sure Joan will completely agree with me, including Joan as part of the talent, so.
Huh?
Yeah, it was amazing. And
No, but
Todd
Lindsay was-
Stebbins, if some of you
Lindsay.
know him from the library board, is playing the part of Scrooge. So,
Perfect, nice.
just a couple ways to support our friends and employees in the community, so.
Yeah, like you said, you didn't even need to go Lindsay said you didn't even need to go to like a third take because the second take was so good.
People were just nailing it out of the park, and I didn't even go to the second taping, but apparently we had original music, which was beyond what I was expecting. We had a fiddle player and a piano player, and I think the Jingle Gals are providing some singing, so yeah, it was quite a production, a lot of fun though.
Cool idea.
Yeah.
Just a couple things. Harry Whitehorse, a longtime Monona resident and well-known artist, passed away late last week. If you hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
There will be no meeting on the 18th unless something comes up and we have to schedule something very quick, last minute. So right now, our next meeting will be on Tuesday, January 2nd. And both of our meetings in January will be on Tuesdays because of the holidays. Other than that, I guess I'd like to wish everybody happy holidays and see you in a month. We just have many appointments to approve. Joan, do I need to read all these?
No. And,
So-
yeah, these are, I just want to say that these are you're recertifying the current election staff. So these are not like committee type, these are staff.
So is there a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve the appointments.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Inspectors are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.